The Eastern Roman Empire under the entered a transformative era that would define its place in history. Ascending the throne with a vision that stretched far beyond mere survival, Justinian sought to restore the splendor of Rome, weaving together law, military might, culture, and religion into a tapestry of imperial authority. Theodora, his empress and partner in governance, was a formidable force, shaping policy, advocating for the marginalized, and influence could be wielded as effectively through counsel as through command. Together, they formed a duality of ambition and vision, driving the empire toward an era of unprecedented achievement. From the moment of his ascension, Justinian recognized that the foundation of power lay in law. The empire's legal framework had become fragmented over centuries, creating inconsistency and uncertainty across the system. He commissioned the Codex Justinianus, an exhaustive codification of centuries of Roman law. Judges and administrators across the empire now had a standardized reference, ensuring justice, predictability, and legitimacy. The codification not only streamlined governance but became a tool of social cohesion, binding diverse populations under a shared understanding of rights, duties, and imperial authority. Law became the spine of a civilization striving to recover its lost glory. Yet governance required more than legal reform. Military strength, strategy, and vision were equally essential. Justinian embarked on ambitious campaigns to reclaim territories that had once belonged to Rome, North Africa, Italy, and parts of Hispania. These campaigns were not merely exercises in territorial expansion, they were assertions of legitimacy, statements that Byzantium was the heir of Rome. Disciplined, brilliant, and loyal, led Byzantine forces across the Mediterranean, orchestrating sieges, coordinating naval and land operations, and demonstrating that strategy could achieve what brute force alone could not. Cities long abandoned to chaos and decay were brought back under imperial control, their populations integrated through both diplomacy and governance. In Constantinople, the heart of the empire, Justinian faced both opportunity and peril. The city was vibrant, wealthy, and strategically vital. But its populace was volatile, its politlif. The Nika revolt had demonstrated that even the most powerful emperor could face existential threats from within. Chariot factions, political rivals, and disgruntled citizens converged in a riot that engulfed the city in flames. Justinian, initially considering flight, was persuaded by Theodora to remain resolute. Her words, immortalized in history, underscored the gravity of leadership. The preservation of the empire demanded courage, vision, and an unwavering commitment to authority. The rebuilding of Constantinople and the architecture became both practical projects and symbols of power. The Hagia Sophia, rebuilt after earthquakes and riots, embodied the fusion of spiritual authority and imperial ambition. Its soaring domes, intricate mosaics, and precise engineering conveyed a message to the citizens. Byzantium was a civilization capable of achieving the extraordinary. Across the city, public works. Guisius demonstrated the empire's capacity for organization, planning, and cultural patronage. Each construction was a tangible assertion of order, capability, and vision. Religion played a central role in consolidating authority. Christianity was not merely a personal faith with the laicalism of governance. Bishops, patriarchs, and monasteries acted as intermediaries between citizens and the state, mediating disputes, guiding behavior, and reinforcing loyalty. Religious festivals, rituals, and ceremonies created a rhythm to civic life that intertwined spiritual devotion with social cohesion. The emperor, as God's representative on earth, wielded authority that was both temporal and divine, ensuring that faith and governance were in imperial strategy. The empire's economy under Justinian was eventually tested by campaigns and crises. Trade networks spanning Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa ensured the flow of goods, wealth, and information. Constantinople's ports bustled with activity, serving as the hub of commerce and culture. Sasses were levied efficiently, funding armies, infrastructure, and monumental projects. Wealth was not hoarded but strategically deployed to maintain both the internal stability of the empire and its external military ambitions. Commerce, culture, and governance became mutually reinforcing pillars of resilience. Education and scholarship flourished alongside imperial ambition. Monasteries, schools, and courts preserved classifying innovation in theology, law, and philosophy. Literate administrators and clerics were essential for governance, ensuring that policies were implemented effectively across distant provinces. Scholars produced manuscripts, copied classical texts, and maintained a continuity of knowledge that bridged the ancient world with the medieval. Education became both a practical instrument and legislation and a cultural beacon, sustaining Byzantine civilization in turbulent times. Yet the empire was not without challenges. The Justinianic plague, sweeping through Constantinople and its provinces, decimated populations and disrupted both economic and military operations. Urban centers faltered under the strain, agriculture suffered from labor shortages, and military recruitment faced serious obstacles. The empire's response combined adaptability with foresight. Trade routes were reorganized, quarantines and resources redirected to ensure survival. This resilience demonstrated the empire's ability to absorb shocks while maintaining governance, social cohesion, and strategic focus. Even as threats loomed, Byzantium's military evolved to meet the demands of conquest, defense, and integration. The army combined Roman legacies with innovative tactics, coordinating cavalry, infantry, and naval forces across diverse theaters. Fortifications were reinforced along key frontiers, supply lines carefully managed, and intelligence utilized to anticipate threats. Campaigns in North Africa and Italy highlighted sieges, negotiations, and careful diplomacy often proved more decisive than battlefield victories alone. The military became not merely a force of conquest, but a mechanism of governance, projection of power, and maintenance of stability. The relationship between central authority and one's constant management required constant management. Reclaimed territories, though officially under Byzantine control, had local customs and grievances. Governors were appointed to administer law, collect taxes, and integrate regions into the empire, balancing coercion with persuasion. Loyalty was cultivated through incentives, honors, and recognition, while resistance was met with strategic force. Governance was a delicate art, requiring sensitivity to local conditions, knowledge of history, and the capacity to project authority without provoking permanent unrest. Byzantium's cultural influence extended beyond its borders. Through trade, diplomacy, and missionary activity, the empire projected ideas, art, and religion across the Mediterranean and into Europe. Orthodox Christianity spread along established trade routes, linking distant communities to Byzantine culture and law. Artistic styles, architecture, and literature served as reference points for emerging civilizations. Byzantine soft power complemented military and economic might, ensuring that influence persisted even where direct control was limited. Civilization was preserved and propagated through culture as much as conquest. The integration of law, religion, militarism capable of enduring centuries of challenges. Unlike the Western Roman Empire, which had collapsed under fragmentation and external pressure, Byzantium remained resilient. Every element of society, from urban centers to provincial village to stability, institutions were strengthened, citizens engaged, and leadership exercised with vision. Civilization endured because it was managed with foresight, adaptability, and coherence. Daily life in Constantinople reflected this integration. Markets thrived, education persisted, religious life flourished, and civic ceremonies structured social order. Citizens were engaged in maintaining the rhythm of the empire, whether through trade, military service, scholarship, or religious observance. This participation reinforced loyalty and identity, creating a civilization that was resilient, adaptable, and culturally rich. Byzantium's survival was a product of deliberate planning, integrated governance, and societal cohesion. The influence of Theodora on Justinian's reign cannot be overstated. Born into obscurity, and having risen through the courts of Constantinople, she became a symbol of intelligence, resilience, and political acumen. Her counsel guided the emperor during the most perilous moments, including the Nika revolt, when the capital burned and the loyalty of the populace wavered. Theodora's insistence on standing firm, refusing to flee, and confronting rebellion with strategic decisiveness underscored her understanding of power. Legitimacy relied not merely on military force, but on the perception of authority, moral conviction, and calculated courage. Beyond moments of crisis, she influenced law, social reform, and the free them, demonstrating that governance was enhanced by inclusive, strategic vision. While Theodora shaped the moral and political framework of the empire, Justinian embarked on an ambitious program of military and territorial expansion. North Africa, under the rule of the Vandals, had long been lost to Roman control. Justinian recognized the strategic importance of reclaiming these fertile provinces. They not only supplied grain to Constantinople, but also secured Mediterranean trade routes. The general Belisarius led a meticulously planned campaign, coordinating naval movements with land assaults. The Vandals, confident in their isolation from Eastern power, were unprepared for the speed, discipline, and tactical brilliance of the Byzantine forces. Within months, the Byzantine Empire had re-established control over key cities, such as Carthage, securing a vital lifeline for commerce and asserting imperial authority. The conquest of Italy was a more complex undertaking. The Ostrogoths, entrenched across urban centers and fortified towns, resisted fiercely. The Byzantine military adapted through a combination of siegecraft, intelligence, and diplomacy, negotiating alliances with the official. Cities such as Rome, Ravenna, and Naples became arenas of strategic maneuvering, with each victory reinforcing imperial legitimacy. Justinian's vision extended beyond conquest. He sought to integrate these territories into Byzantium, applying codified law, appointing governors loyal to Constantinople, and revitalizing infrastructure to bind the reclaimed provinces to the empire's core. Administration in these newly reconquered regions required innovation. Governors implemented Justinian's legal reforms, standardizing justice and ensuring consistency with Constantinople's expectations. Tax collection was reorganized to balance unease with population sustainability, preventing revolt while funding continued military and civic operations. Local elites were opted into administrative structures, blending imperial oversight with regional knowledge. Integration relied on law, culture, and practical governance rather than mere coercion, demonstrating Byzantium's sophisticated approach to empire building. Meanwhile, Justinian's campaigns were intertwined with religious objectives. The spread of Orthodox Christianity served both spiritual and political ends. Bishops and patriarchs supported imperial authority, mediating disputes, organizing charitable initiatives, and reinforcing moral order. Churches and monasteries acted as centers of education, culture, and social cohesion, integrating populations across distant provinces into a shared identity. Faith became inseparable from loyalty, ensuring that the Byzantine Empire could assert both temporal and spiritual influence simultaneously. The logistics of warfare highlighted Byzantium's organizational capacity. Armies required food, equipment, and coordination across challenging terrain. Often far from the capital, supply lines were meticulously planned, integrating naval transport, local provisions, and storage systems. Intelligence networks monitored enemy movement sequence and adapting strategy accordingly. Battles were not merely contests of strength, but complex equations involving timing, communication, and maneuver. Success depended as much on planning and agility as on the valor of soldiers on the field. Even as campaigns unfolded abroad, the capital remained a focal point of civic life and culture. The reconstruction of Constantinople after revolts and disasters demonstrated the empire's resilience. Public works projects, including aqueducts, bridges, and markets, revitalized urban infrastructure, ensuring the continued prosperity of citizens. Cultural investments reinforced identity and legitimacy, creating tangible evidence of the empire's strength and foresight. Architecture, mosaics, and monuments projected authority while inspiring civic pride and cohesion among inhabitants. Plague and famine tested both the empire's administration and the resolve of its citizens. The Justinianic plague, sweeping through Constantinople and surrounding provinces, desolated populations, disrupted commerce, and undermined military recruitment. Yet, the empire adapted. Quarantine measures, redistribution of resources, and reorganization of trade routes mitigated the worst effects. Society persisted because administrative sustenance, cultural institutions, and civic engagement provided resilience. Byzantium survived where other empires had faltered, demonstrating the interplay between governance, culture, and societal endurance. Economic strategies were as deliberate as military campaigns. Trade hubs such as Alexandria, Thessaloniki, and Constantinople facilitated the movement of goods, wealth, and information. Markets adapted to population fluctuations, wars, and plagues, ensuring continuity in commerce. Taxation supported not only always but also public works, education, and cultural initiatives. Economic health became a stabilizing force underpinning military operations, urban life, and imperial authority. Prosperity and governance were mutually reinforcing pillars of resilience. Education and scholarship complemented these efforts. Schools, monasteries, and courts preserved knowledge while training administrators, clerics, and military officers. Literacy and cultural understanding ensured that governance could be implemented consistently across vast territories. Historical chronicles, theological treatises, and philosophical writings flourished under imperial patronage, creating continuity and cohesion. The Byzantine approach recognized that critical to statecraft as military victories or economic wealth. Diplomacy operated alongside conquest to consolidate influence. Negotiations with Persia, Slavs, Bulgars, and other powers blended gifts, alliances, and strategic marriages with careful leveraged intelligence and subtle persuasion to extend influence, often achieving results without conflict. Diplomatic engagement complemented military prowess, ensuring that the empire's reach extended beyond territories under direct control. Success was measured not only by conquest but by stability, integration, and sustained influence. Cultural identity was reinforced through art, literature, and religion. Byzantine mosaics, frescoes, and architectural design reflected both imperial authority and spiritual devotion. Literature preserved classical knowledge while exploring contemporary theological and philosophical questions. Public ceremonies and religious festivals reinforced civic cohesion, integrating diverse populations under shared traditions. Culture became a tool of governance, identity, and continuity, ensuring that citizens understood their place within the empire and their obligations to the state. Social integration extended to provincial populations, where local elites and citizens were woven into the administrative and cultural fabric. Loyalty was cultivated through recognition, honor, and opportunity, creating vested interest in the empire's success. Resistance lit strategically, blending negotiation, reform, and, when necessary, decisive military action. Byzantium's capacity to integrate, rather than merely dominate, set it apart from other empires of its era. The interplay of military, legal, economic, created a system capable of enduring shocks and adapting to changing circumstances. Unlike the West, which collapsed under fragmentation, invasions, and internal decay, Byzantium demonstrated resilience through institutional integration. Sound. Every sector, from commerce to scholarship, creating a civilization capable of surviving plague, revolt, and war. Governance in Byzantium was a comprehensive enterprise and diverse aspects of society under coherent, strategic leadership. As the empire consolidated gains in North Africa and Italy, attention turned to administration and long-term stability. Governors implemented Justinian's laws, coordinated taxation, and supervised local militias. Trade and commerce were reinvigorated, ensuring that cities recovered economically as well as politically. Cultural integration, through architecture, art, and religious practice, fostered a shared sense of belonging, transforming reconquered territories into extensions of Byzantine identity. The empire's capacity to rebuild, integrate, and govern effectively became a hallmark of its enduring power. Military campaigns, administrative reforms, cultural investments, and religious cohesion collectively reinforced Byzantium's resilience. Every conquest, every policy, and every initiative was part of a larger strategy to secure authority, sustain civilization, and project influence across the Mediterranean. Byzantium thrived because it combined ambition with pragmatism, ensuring that every element of society contributed to the survival and flourishing of the empire. Civilization endured not by accident but by design, foresight, and integrated governance. The stage was now set for further expansion, for cultural and intellectual growth, and for the challenges that would test Leslie's vision. Theodora's influence, military brilliance, and administrative innovation had established a foundation, but the path ahead would demand adaptability, resilience, and wisdom. The successes in North Africa and Italy were victories not just of arms, but of strategy, law, and cultural integration, demonstrating that Byzantium's strength lay to empire. The Italian peninsula presented a far greater challenge than North Africa. Its cities were fortified, its terrain difficult, and its people wary of new rulers. The Ostrogoths, entrenched in strongholds across Ravenna, Rome, and other cities, resisted Byzantine authority with determination. Justinian understood that outright conquest alone would not secure lasting control. He needed a combination of military and administrative integration. Belisarius led the campaigns with careful planning, using both direct assaults and psychological strategy. Rumors, bribes, and targeted negotiations softened opposition before armies ever approached city walls, demonstrating that victory often depended as much on cunning as on force. Rome, once the heart of the Western Empire, became a symbolically important city for Justinian. Its recapture was both a political and moral triumph, signaling the revival of imperial authority and the continuity of Roman tradition under Byzantine guidance. The city, however, had suffered from decades of instability and required extensive rebuilding. Public works, aqueducts, and marketplaces were restored to revitalize urban life. Governance was re-established through the appointment of officials who implemented the codified law, collected taxes efficiently, and ensured that Byzantine authority was found without excessive coercion. Integration required patience, strategy, and attention to local customs. In Ravenna, the Ostrogothic capital, resistance was more entrenched. Belisarius employed siegecraft, cutting off supplies, and using naval superiority to isolate the city. Intelligence gathered from local informants allowed the Byzantines to anticipate enemy maneuvers, apply pressure at weak points, and militarize place. Eventually, Ravenna fell, marking the consolidation of Byzantine power in northern Italy. Yet victory was not merely a matter of military control. It required careful management of the population, incorporation of local elites into governance, and the rebuilding of infrastructure to restore economic stability. Beyond Italy, the empire's reach extended to the islands of the Mediterranean and the strategic coastlines that controlled trade and communication. Naval power became a critical component of Justinian's strategy. Fleets patrolled key sea lanes, protected merchant vessels, and supported amphibious operations that allowed rapid troop movement. The integration of land and sea forces demonstrated Byzantine military sophistication, ensuring that victories on one front could be reinforced and secured across multiple theaters. Control of the Mediterranean was not just a matter of prestige. It was essential to the empire's economy and strategic security. As the empire expanded, the codification of law remained central to maintaining cohesion. Provincial governors, magistrates, and military officials relied on the codes to justice and enforce consistent standards. Local disputes, once potentially destabilizing, were resolved according to a shared legal framework, reinforcing the perception of fairness and legitimacy. Citizens, soldiers, and local elites understood their essence within this structured system, creating a sense of stability even amid conscious policy was equally vital. Orthodoxy became a unifying force across newly conquered regions. Churches and monasteries were not merely places of worship, but centers of community life, education, and civic engagement. Bishops acted as intermediaries between the people and imperial authority, guiding morality, resolving disputes, and reinforcing loyalty to the state. Religious grandeur and liturgical ceremonies integrated diverse licenses of the Byzantine culture, promoting unity and discouraging rebellion. Faith and governance were inseparable tools in consolidating power. Education and scholarship thrived alongside these efforts. Monastic schools and urban academies, training administrators, clerics, and military officers. Literacy and cultural competence ensured class effectively across vast territories. Byzantine scholars copied manuscripts, studied theology and philosophy, and maintained historical records that bridged the ancient world with the medieval. Knowledge became both a practical necessity for governance and a means of cultural continuity, sustaining civilization even during crisis. The administration of taxes was organized. Reconquered cities were integrated into imperial fiscal systems, in ensuring that revenue supported armies, but local economies were revitalized through the restoration of markets, encouragement of trade, and investment in infrastructure. Urban populations were incentivized to contribute to imperial stability, while strategic taxation balanced fiscal ease with social sustainability. Economic management became a foundation of resilience, enabling the empire to maintain both military and civil operations simultaneously. Military strategy extended beyond the battlefield. The Byzantine army integrated intelligence and coordination to respond to rebellions, external threats, and logistical challenges. Campaigns in Italy, North Africa, and the Mediterranean islands demonstrated adaptability. Sieges, ambushes, and strategic retreats were employed when necessary, showing that victory required foresight as much as bravery. Soldiers were trained not only in combat but in maintaining order in newly acquired territories, ensuring that conquest translated into sustainable control. Urban and rural life required careful attention. Cities like Rome, Ravenna, Carthage, and Alexandria were cultural and economic hubs, needing protection, restoration, and governance. Infrastructure and governance systems, roads, marketplaces, and civic buildings, enhancing the quality of life for citizens while projecting the authority of the emperor. Villages and rural regions, providing food and manpower, were incorporated into supply networks, and Byzantium's resilience depended on the seamless integration of all levels of society. Plagues and natural disasters continued to test the empire. Outbreaks of disease, famine, and earthquakes challenged both governance and military campaigns. Responses combined practical management with societal support. Quarantines, medical aid, and strategic resource allocation mitigated the worst effects. Civic institutions, religious guidance, and administrative coordination allowed the empire to absorb shocks that might have crippled lesser states. Resilience was systemic, relying on the interplay of governance, culture, military, and religion. Diplomacy complemented military campaigns. Byzantium negotiated with neighboring powers, securing alliances, neutralizing threats, and leveraging marriages and gifts for strategic advantage. Persians, Slavs, Bulgars, and emerging nomadic groups were engaged not only through combat but through negotiation, intelligence, and influence. Byzantium projected power without overextending its forces, demonstrating that diplomacy was as vital as military might in sustaining an empire. Long-term stability required careful balance between coercion, alliance, and cultural influence. Cultural achievements reinforced imperial authority. Architecture, mosaics, literature, and ceremonial life communicated the empire's values and strength. Monuments like the Hagia Sophia symbolized both divine favor and political power. Public rituals, festivals, and civic events created cohesion, ensuring that citizens shared a common identity and loyalty. Education, religious observance, and cultural participation integrated communities, reinforcing Byzantine civilization across diverse regions. Byzantium's administrative structure was adaptive. Governors, magistrates, and military commanders operated within a framework that combined central authority with local knowledge. Loyalty was cultivated through recognition, responsibility, and opportunity, while resistance was managed through negotiation or, when necessary, decisive action. The integration of law, governance, and culture created a durable system capable of enduring political turbulence, economic disruption, and external threats. Unlike the fragmented West, Byzantium survived and thrived through coordination, foresight, and institutional resilience. Every element of Byzantine strategy, military, legal, cultural, religious, economic, worked in concert. Reconquered territories became integrated parts of the empire, contributing to stability, prosperity, and influence. Soldiers, administrators, and citizens all participated in sustaining the empire, creating a civilization that endured because it was managed holistically. Victory was not measured solely by conquest, but by integration, governance, and the creation of resilient systems. While the military campaigns restored territory and authority, the Justinianic plague challenged the very fabric of Byzantine society. Sweeping through Constantinople and distant provinces, desolate populations disrupted trade and threatened the continuity of governance. Entire communities were affected, leaving behind abandoned homes, labor shortages, and economic instability. Yet the empire adapted. Officials reorganized food distribution, coordinated medical care through religious and civic institutions, and implemented quarantines where possible. The plague became a test of systemic wisdom, stating that Byzantium's strength relied not only on armies but on integrated civil administration. Economic management during this period was a careful balancing act. Trade hubs such as Constantinople, Alexandria, and Thessaloniki remained vibrant, facilitating the movement of grain, textiles, luxury goods. Merchants, artisans, and sailors ensured that the flow of commerce persisted despite disruptions. Taxes were collected systematically, funding armies, infrastructure, public works, and cultural initiatives. Fiscal policy was designed to sustain both the urban population and military operations, ensuring that even amidst plagues and wars, the empire's economy remained functional. Wealth became a tool of stability, enabling Byzantium to project power and sustain civic life simultaneously. Urban resilience was a hallmark of Byzantine society. Constantinople, even after revolts and disasters, maintained its role as an economic and cultural center. Public works projects revitalized aqueducts, roads, marketplaces, and defensive walls. Civic spaces served as forums for commerce, education, and community interaction, fostering cohesion among diverse populations. Churches and monasteries acted as centers for relief, education, and social stability, demonstrating that the empire's integration of religion and governance was essential for societal endurance. The vibrancy of urban life underscored that civilization could persist even under immense pressure. Education and scholarship flourished under imperial patronage. Monastic schools, urban academies, and intellectual circles preserved classical knowledge while training administrators, clerics, and military officers. Literacy ensured that laws were understood, executed, and cultural norms maintained. Scholars copied manuscripts, debated theological questions, and chronicled historical events, providing continuity and perspective across generations. Education was not merely a cultural pursuit, it was a mechanism of governance, reinforcing a lineage capacity, societal cohesion, and the ideological framework of the empire. Diplomatic relations were essential to Byzantium's survival. The empire maintained a complex web of alliances, treaties, and marriages with neighboring powers, including Persians, Slavs, Bulgars, and emerging nomadic groups. Gifts, strategic marriages, and calculated concessions complemented military power, allowing Byzantium to extend influence without overextension. Diplomacy functioned alongside military campaigns, creating a balance between coercion and collaboration. The empire's capacity to negotiate, integrate, and adapt ensured that external threats were managed with foresight and flexibility. Trade and commerce were intertwined with cultural influence. The empire exported not only goods but also artistic styles. Orthodox Christianity spread along trade routes, linking distant regions to Byzantine cultural and spiritual life. Architecture, mosaics, and literature influenced neighboring civilizations, projecting soft power that complemented military and economic dominance. Cultural influence became a strategic asset, ensuring that Byzantium's presence extended beyond its political borders and persisted even in regions not directly under control. Civic life was reinforced through public and religious rituals. These events integrated communities, reinforced hierarchy, and projected imperial authority. Citizens participated in communal activities, observed religious holidays, and engaged in marketplaces, sustaining social cohesion. Public works and urban infrastructure facilitated daily life while symbolizing the empire's capability and vision. By intertwining governance, religion, and civic engagement, Byzantium maintained stability across its diverse territories, ensuring that culture and administration were mutually reinforcing. The administration of provinces emphasized integration and standardization. Governors, magistrates, and military commanders implemented Justinian's legal reforms, ensuring consistent application across cities and villages. Tax collection, legal adjudication, and military oversight were coordinated to maintain stability. Local elites were incorporated into governance, fostering loyalty and reducing resistance. By embedding central authority within regional structures, Byzantium balanced control with local knowledge, creating a network of governance that could adapt to challenges while preserving cohesion. Military readiness continued alongside administrative and civic efforts. Fortifications were strengthened along strategic frontiers including Italy, North Africa, and the eastern provinces. Professional armies were trained in coordination, logistics, and combined arms tactics, integrating infantry, cavalry, and naval forces. Intelligence left lumens of both enemies and allies, allowing for anticipatory action. Military organization was deeply connected to administrative efficiency. Campaigns were funded, supplied, and coordinated through sophisticated ensured effectiveness even far from Constantinople. Religious authority reinforced societal stability. Orthodox Christianity acted as a unifying force, providing moral guidance, legal consistency, and social cohesion. Bishops and patriarchs mediated disputes, coordinated relief efforts, and ensured adherence to imperial directives. Churches and monasteries functioned as centers and education, social welfare, and civic participation, embedding imperial influence within daily life. Religion, governance, and culture formed an inseparable triad, sustaining civilization in the face of demographic, economic, and military pressures. Cultural preservation was as strategic as military conquest. Byzantium maintained Roman legal traditions while integrating Greek language, philosophy, and art. Literature preserved classical knowledge while exploring contemporary theological, philosophical, and political questions. Mosaics, frescoes, and architectural innovations conveyed authority, reinforced religious devotion, and inspired civic pride. Culture became both a tool of governance and a reflection of societal identity, ensuring that Byzantine civilization remained coherent, resilient, and distinct amid internal and external challenges. The economic, administrative, and cultural systems functioned in tandem to reinforce stability. Trade revenues funded armies and infrastructure, maintained social order. Education ensured competent administration. Cultural projects reinforced loyalty and identity. This integration allowed Byzantium to absorb shocks, respond to crises, and maintain resilience. The empire's endurance was the result of deliberate planning, strategic foresight, and holistic governance, demonstrating that civilization's survival is the coordination of multiple interdependent systems. Provincial management emphasized adaptability. Local governors were empowered to respond to the shablo operating within the framework of imperial law and policy. Military garrisons were strategically placed to maintain security, suppress rebellions, and support civil administration. Tax policies were adapted to local conditions, ensuring compliance without provoking unrest. By combining central authority with localized responsiveness, Byzantium maintained cohesion across vast and culturally diverse territories. The integration of daily life, governance, and culture extended even to rural areas. Villages contributed to food supply, manpower, and local administration. Religious institutions reinforced ethical standards and community engagement. Education, while concentrated in urban centers, influenced rural governance through clerical intermediaries. Every aspect of society, from city to countryside, contributed to the empire's stability, illustrating that Byzantium's resilience becomes a situation rather than isolated strength, even as external threats persisted, from Persian forces in the east to nomadic incursions in the Balkans. Byzantium's strategic flexibility allowed it to survive and thrive. Military campaigns, fortifications, and diplomacy combined to neutralize threats. Trade, culture, and education ensured continuity of society. Religion reinforced loyalty and moral cohesion. The empire's integrated systems allowed it to endure pressures that had overwhelmed the Western Roman Empire, demonstrating that resilience requires not just strength, but intelligent, adaptive governance. As Justinian's reign progressed, the consolidation of his legacy became paramount. The territories reclaimed through decades of military campaigns required long-term stability, integration, and governance. Provinces in Italy, North Africa, and the eastern Mediterranean had been brought under Byzantine control, but the work of assimilation had only just begun. Governors and administrators ensured that codified law was applied consistently, public works maintained infrastructure, and local elites were integrated into political systems. This integration transformed conquest into durable authority, proving that empire is maintained not by armies alone, but by the careful orchestration of law, governance, and culture. Architectural achievements reflected both imperial ambition and the spiritual aspirations of the empire. The Hagia Sophia, completed during Justinian's reign, became a symbol of divine favor and imperial power. Its vast domes, intricate mosaics, and innovative engineering inspired awe for every intimation of the empire's grandeur. Across Constantinople and reconquered cities, churches, bridges, aqueducts, and marketplaces serve as both functional infrastructure and symbols of authority. Public spaces were carefully designed to reinforce the power of the emperor while facilitating civic life, illustrating that architecture could embody governance, culture, and religion simultaneously. Justinian's codification of Roman law, now known as the Corpus Juris Civilis, was perhaps the most enduring aspect of his legacy. By systematizing centuries of legal precedent into a coherent framework, he created a foundation for justice, administration, and social cohesion that would influence Europe for centuries. Judges, governors, and magistrates across the empire had clear guidance, ensuring fairness, predictability, and authority. The code became a unifying instrument, allowing diverse populations to coexist under shared legal principles, reinforcing loyalty and maintaining societal order even in the most distant provinces. Cultural patronage flourished under Justinian and Theodora. Literature, art, and scholarship received imperial support, preserving classical knowledge while fostering innovation. Manuscripts were copied and studied, philosophical and theological debates encouraged, and histories chronicled the achievements of Byzantium. Mosaic art, frescoes, and decorative architecture reflected a synthesis of Roman, Greek, and Christian traditions, creating a distinct Byzantine style. Cultural projects were not merely aesthetic, they were strategic, reinforcing identity, loyalty, and cohesion across the empire's vast territories. Religious policy continued to serve both spiritual and political objectives. Orthodox Christianity unified the empire's diverse populations, embedding moral and ethical codes into civic life. Bishops and patriarchs mediated disputes, coordinated charitable efforts, and reinforced loyalty to the emperor. Religious and liturgical ceremonies strengthened communal bonds, providing rhythm and cohesion to daily life. Faith became inseparable from governance, creating a framework in which spiritual devotion reinforced civic responsibility and allegiance to the state. The military remained a cornerstone of stability. Even after successful campaigns, the army was maintained, trained, and stationed strategically to defend borders, suppress rebellion, and project authority. Fortifications were reinforced along key frontiers, garrisons established in critical cities, and naval forces patrolled essential trade routes. The integration of intelligence, logistics, and disciplined coordination ensured that the empire could respond quickly to threats, while careful planning minimized disruption to civilian life. Military strength was balanced with governance, discipline, and cultural integration, ensuring that power was sustainable rather than fleeting. Economic systems supported both urban and forest state networks spanned the Mediterranean, linking Constantinople to Alexandria, Antioch, Thessaloniki, and distant regions. Markets thrive, agriculture organized to supply urban centers, and taxation funded military and civic projects. Byzantine merchants and artisans contributed to a vibrant economy that allowed both luxury and subsistence needs to be met. Economic resilience underpinned military campaigns, cultural projects, and urban reconstruction, demonstrating that prosperity was inseparable from stability and governance. Education remained integral to maintaining competence in administration, law, and military strategy. Schools, monasteries, and scholarly institutions trained the next generation of bureaucrats, military officers, and clergy. Literacy ensured the consistent application of law, effective management of provinces, and the transmission of cultural knowledge. Intellectual engagement also created continuity across generations, preserving classical traditions while adapting to contemporary needs. Knowledge was both practical and strategic, sustaining the empire's institutions and cultural identity. Diplomacy reinforced the empire's influence. Alliances, treaties, and strategic marriages extended Byzantine reach, while negotiation and intelligence prevented overextension and mitigated conflict. Relations with Persia, Slavs, Bulgars, and emerging powers were managed carefully, blending gifts, political marriages, and promises with subtle threats and displays of military power. Diplomacy allowed Byzantium to stabilize borders, secure trade routes, and extend influence without unnecessary litigation. The empire's survival depended on its capacity network of relationships as skillfully as it waged war. The integration of governance, military, culture, religion, and economy ensured that Byzantium could endure challenges that had toppled other civilizations. Revolts, plagues, and external invasions tested the system repeatedly, yet the empire persisted. Citizens, soldiers, scholars, and clergy were all participants in sustaining civilization, creating a network of interdependent systems that reinforced loyalty, stability, and prosperity. Sound Byzantium thrived because it coordinated every aspect of society, transforming ambition into sustainable achievement. By the end of Justinian's reign, the Byzantine Empire had reclaimed much of the Roman world, codified law, preserved classical culture, and projected authority across Europe, North Africa, and the Eastern Mediterranean. The empire had endured plagues, revolts, and economic crises, proving the resilience of integrated governance. Theodora's influence, the brilliance of generals like Belisarius, and the participation of citizens in civic, religious, and cultural life created a civilization capable of enduring beyond the lifetime of any single ruler. The lasting influence of Justinian's reign extended far beyond his death. The Codex Justinianus became the foundation of European legal traditions, influencing law from the medieval period into modern civil codes. Architecture, art, and religious institutions inspired generations, preserving Byzantine cultural identity even as the empire faced decline in subsequent centuries. Administrative systems demonstrated the importance of centralized authority balanced with local integration, serving as a model for future empires. Education and scholarship ensured that knowledge, law, and culture were transmitted across generations, bridging antiquity and the medieval world. The story of Byzantium under Justinian illustrates the interplay between ambition and resilience, military conquest, legal reform, cultural patronage, religious integration, and economic management were not isolated achievements, but interconnected strategies. Civilization endured because it was carefully orchestrated, adaptive, and holistic. Every soldier, scholar, cleric, and citizen contributed to sustaining a authority's identity and authority demonstrating that empire is not merely seized but maintained through strategy, cohesion, and foresight. As the final chapter of Justinian's rule closes, the Eastern Roman Empire stood as a beacon of resilience, culture, and governance. It had weathered plagues, rebellions, and military challenges while expanding influence, codifying law, and fostering cultural achievement. The lessons of this era resonate across centuries. Civilization survives through integre islis, the active participation of its people. Justinian's legacy endures not only in the very understanding of how empires can combine power, culture, and foresight to thrive across time and adversity. The curtain falls on this era, leaving a civilization transformed, resilient, and enduring. From the ashes of revolt and plague to the heights of cultural, legal, and architectural achievement, Byzantium under Justinian exemplifies strategy and human perseverance. The stage is set for future challenges, but the foundation laid by this remarkable ruler ensures that the empire's influence will resonate for centuries.